Hey guys, gotta apologize. I'm looking a little tired today. I actually woke up early because I wanted to knock out this video for you. So today we're gonna be looking into Pepsico, the company that makes Pepsi, but a lot more than that. They make other soft drinks, they make snacks and so forth. So we're going to be looking into Pepsi today. But before we jump into this video, I just wanted us to cover something. If you feel that this material is helpful to you, I would love for you to please like the videos. If you want to receive more of this content, you feel it's helpful, please subscribe to the videos and please share with other people so that they can benefit from this same material that you're receiving. Now that we've gotten into that, let's take a look at PepsiCo. And this is a company, if I come here, I could see action from around 68, but it's small action. Green candles, it's been moving up, moved down in 2002, but we see that it jumped down significantly in 2008. And for those who don't remember or recall, 2008 was the financial crisis. From that time, it was down for about a year. But moving steadily up until it finally hit this current year. We got a lot of companies, fundamentally sound companies, that are going back, that are moving back in 2023, some even 2022 and 23. But PepsiCo, we see it's going back in 23. So now that we've taken a look at this annual chart, because in this chart, every candle represents in this chart, every candle represents a year. It's a 12-month period. Now that we've taken a look at this yearly or annual candlestick chart, we're going to change the setting to weekly to see what it's been doing from a weekly perspective. And we look back here, December of 2020, it's actually been went down a little and moved up, went down a little, moved up. So we've seen it moving up. Now we've seen it dip a little, move back up, and it's dipped even more this last week, of which we're not even fully through the week. We're just on, the market is about to open in around 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and this is Tuesday. So, or no, this is Wednesday. So we see that just Monday and Tuesday, it's already moved up nicely this week. Let's see what happens. We notice that in after hours, I should say. Well, actually, when I was looking at it in after hours, let me refresh that. When I was looking at it in after hours, it was showing in the negative. But now that we're closer to the market opening, it's actually showing in the positive. So it's 9:08 now. The market opens at 9:30. Well, now it was just showing 20 cents positive. Now it's only showing 3 cents. I guess we'll see what happens today. And today's date is October 25th because we know that these stock tips that I give to you guys or this analysis is timely. Not only is it about buying a fundamentally sound stock, it's about buying a fundamentally sound stock when it's at its 52-week low or its annual low price. So that now when you buy it and you move through the rest of that year, you don't have to see your investment going down. You can see it going up. So we see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In 10 weeks, we see it only had a positive week 3 times. Those last 10 weeks it went down, moved sideways for 2 weeks, and now this week it's still moving sideways, but starting to move up. So let's see if it's breaking out. Having said that, we've looked at the technicals or the candlestick chart for this company. Now let's jump over and take a look at the fundamentals. Now that we've covered the technicals for Pepsico, now we want to look at the fundamentals and see what we can find in here. We see that the ticker symbol is PEP, P-E-P, and let's start with the earnings per share. For 2018, it was $8.78. 2019, it dropped. It was $5.20. 2020, it dropped more, but 2020 was the COVID year, and it only dropped from $5.20 to $5.12. 2021, it moved up to $5.49. 2022, it moved up to $6.42. And now in our current year, 2023, it's already at $6. But remember, there are still 2 months left to the year. Like I said, we're in October 25th. So it's still 2 months left to the year. So it can still increase. Possibly we want to see it going over that 642 number. But if not, it's still up pretty decently. Now, the interesting thing, our PE ratio is still a little high for this stock. In every year, 2018, it was 9.34. 2019, it was 18.05. 2020, it was 18.41. 2020, 2020, it was 18.41. 2021, it was 21.81. And 2022, it was 23. So the question is this the lowest price that it's at? Or is it going to drop even further? Let's take a look at our calculator. So, I don't want to go back to 2019's number. Yeah, I don't want to go back to 2019's number. Let's look at, or to 2018's number. Let's look at 2019. 2019 was 18.05 times the earnings per share, which is 6, equals 108.30. What that tells me is currently this stock is at $162.19 a share at a 27.03 PE ratio. If it was to drop all the way down to 2019's PE ratio, which is 18.05, multiply that by the earnings per share, and this stock will be dropping to $108.30. But what about the flip side of that? Let's say, even though 27.03 is a little high, let's say this happens to be the low earnings per share for this year. Where could this stock move up to? Well, between 9 and 12 is 3, 18 and 24 is 6, 18 and 26 is 8, 21 and 30 is 9, 23 and 28 is 5. Let's do it around the middle, so we're going to say 5. So I'm going to look at the current earnings per share, 27.03 plus 5. So the earnings per share goes up 5. It's at 32.03. We multiply that PE 32.03 by the current earnings per share, which is 6, and we come up with 192.18. So if the PE was to move up from here, if this was the low for the year, we could see this stock with my PE analysis going up easily to 192.18. However, there's a simple way of doing that. If we come over here to Yahoo Finance's web sheet, or Yahoo Finance's webpage, we put in the ticker symbol PEP, and under the summary tab, we can scroll down to 1 year target estimate. And they tell us that their 1 year target estimate is that this stock will move up from the current price, 162.19, to 177.98. Now, their estimate is lower than mine, but I'm just looking at what the PE ratios tell me could happen. I'm not sure what's involved in their analysis. It may go deeper into things going on with the company internally and so forth, but those are just two things to consider when looking at where a stock's price can go in the short term. We're talking about 12 months. So now that we've looked at where the price can move, let's jump down to the company. And we see that if we look at the income statement, they made 64.6 billion in 2018, 67.1 billion in 2019, an increase, 70.37 billion in 2020, 79.4 billion in 2021, and 86.3 billion in 2022. Now that's a little interesting because we notice that when we look at their earnings per share, we notice that when we look at their earnings per share, it dropped in 2019 and it dropped a little more in 2020. But at the same time, we also notice that their overall sales or revenue increased every year during these 5 years. So why would their earnings per share have dropped? And the answer is in their net income and their margin. Notice the overall sales that they made those years increased every year. But when we come down to their net income, what we'll notice is that after they paid off all expenses, when it came to the profit that they was left with at the end of the day, they didn't handle it as well some years as others. In 2018, they had 12.5 billion in net income or profit. And what was their profit margin? 19%. But in 2019, they only had 7.3 billion in net income or profit. And what was their profit margin? 10.89%. In 2020, it dropped even more, 7.1 billion. And what was their profit margin? 10.12%. 2021, 7.6 billion, 9.5%. But in 2022, they had 8.9 billion and their profit margin was 10.31%. It was more than 2021 and 2020, but a little under 2019. So in 2018, they really did well in handling the profits they were able to eke out after paying all their expenses. They kept the expenses down a lot better in 2018 than they did in 2019 through 2022. Now, Let's look at return on equity. That's their return on the shareholders' equity or ownership. And we notice these return on equity numbers are, I wouldn't even say decent, very good. 85%, 49%, 52%, 47%, 51%. These are pretty decent, but they're probably not the actual numbers. One factor we have to consider is that if you look at this line under here, debt to equity, when debt to equity is over 200%, the return on equity figures can be skewed. And in this case, debt to equity is 431%, 428%, 585%, 471%, and 433%. So the debt to equity is a little high here. I've seen companies with worse, but this debt to equity is a little high here. And that's going to skew these figures. But even if these figures are at about, really at around the 25% area, or if they're at the 25% area, that would be decent regardless. And if they're at the 35% area, that would be great. Let's go down. We're talking about the debt, so let's look at their balance sheet and see what it tells us. And as we look at their balance sheet, we like to see, you see two things on a balance sheet. You see assets and you see liabilities. Assets are things that you own. Liabilities are things that you owe. And assets, the things like the equipment and so forth that they use to run their company. But there's two different types of assets on the balance sheet and liabilities. There's current, things for like a year and under a year, and there's total. So first, when we look at the current assets and the current liabilities, notice this year the current assets was 21.8 billion. Current liabilities are 22.1 billion. The current liabilities slightly exceed the current assets. And that's straight across all 5 years. That is not something that I like to see. But it's not uncommon with a lot of balance sheets, particularly with banks, because banks make money by money. They lend out money to make more money from the interest. This isn't a bank, but it's not uncommon to see balance sheets where the current liabilities exceed the current assets. I don't like to see it, but it's not uncommon. On the other hand, total liabilities and total assets. The total assets exceeds the total liabilities, which should always be the case. If I see a balance sheet where the total liabilities are exceeding the total assets, I'm passing on that company. I'm not even considering it for an investing opportunity. But even though the total assets don't exceed the total liabilities by much, they do exceed the total liabilities. I'm not going to say this is a great balance sheet. I'm not going to say this is a good balance sheet. But in my opinion, this is a passable balance sheet. And so for that reason, I'll keep moving on with my analysis and consider this for purchase. And um, to be honest, I do own a few shares of PepsiCo at this time. I'm looking to see what happens because um, they stand out among companies. So if they keep moving up, I'll hold on to them. And if they're not doing well, I'll just let them go. We see that they pay a dividend. Actually, we have calculations here, which won't work correctly. That minus symbol is in there, so I'm gonna take that out. So we see that they pay a dividend. They paid $4,900,000,000 in dividends in 2018, $5,300,000,000 in 2019, $5,500,000,000 in 2020, $5,800,000,000 in 2021, and 6,100,000,000 in 2022. They also bought back shares of their own stock. Now, I don't like to see a company issuing more stock, which is exactly what they did in 2018 and 2021. They sold 1.7 billion more shares, $1.7 billion more worth of shares in 2018 and 79 million in 2021. But they bought back, which I love to see, 2.6 billion more worth of shares in 2019, 1.8 billion in 2020, and 1.3 billion in 2022. So they've been buying back more shares of their stock, which is something I like to see. Now, we come down here and we see they had free cash flow 6.2 billion in 2018, 5.5 billion in 2019, 6.4 billion in 2020, 7.1 billion in 2021, and 5.8 billion in 2022. And let's see something. We see that their free cash flow exceeded in every year but 2022, their free cash flow exceeded their the money they was paying out in dividends. Now, why is that important? That's important because if a company is not paying you the dividend from free cash flow, where are they paying you from? They could be borrowing money and paying you that dividend from the money that they borrowed. The free cash flow is the money that they have at the end of the year available to them. So if they're not paying you the dividend from the free cash flow, they could be paying it to you from borrowed money. And if they're paying it to you from borrowed money, what does that tell you? Well, it should tell you that if you're intending to hold on to this company for a while, the dividend may stop because they may not have enough money to pay you. However, if we look at Pepsico, they're getting free cash flow every year, 6.2 billion in 2018. It increased in 2020. It increased in 2021. It dropped a little in 2022. So they did have some free cash flow to pay out some of the dividend, but not all of the dividend. They had 5.8 billion in free cash flow and they paid 6.1 billion in dividends. So a small amount of that could have come from a loan. Let's see if they're back on track next year. Now, shares held by insiders, 0.16%. It sounds like a small number, but that's 0.16% of 1.38 billion outstanding shares. Shares owned by institutions, large banks, institutions, professional owners, 75.96%. Ramon Luis LaGuardia, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, is the chairman and CEO. He became CEO on October 3rd, 2018, and is the company's sixth CEO. PepsiCo has been around in one form or another for about 100 years. Now, Coca-Cola, at the time of this analysis, it was $53.25 a share. They topped Yahoo's list for non-alcoholic beverages, in other words, companies. But PepsiCo, at $168.72 a share at the time of this original analysis, was second. Both companies and Dr. Pepper Keurig are at their 52-week low, or they were at the time of this analysis. I'm not sure how the others have moved up. I looked at the fundamentals and I just targeted this one. This is not an optimal company, but it's passable for me. It's a big name. It may be a consideration for you as well, but you'll see lots of other videos from me with other things that you may like better, or you may like this one and want to put your foot into the ring. In any event, I'll say once again, Please subscribe, hear about other companies at their annual low price that are fundamentally sound and a consideration for you to jump into. Okay, guys, have a great day.